What's up, everybody? Today we're gonna do a video on how to crown studs and what that means, and then how to frame a simple wall, basically just doing a simple wall layout to frame. I was gonna do a video on how to frame a wall, basic wall, here pretty soon, but I was experimenting with TikTok, and what's funny is I was doing a sarcastic video on how to crown studs and why you should crown studs. And I think my little sarcastic rant got lost on most people. But what it told me was that there's a lot of people looking for information on how to do this and what that really means, because I got almost 60,000 views on it. So although the sarcasm was lost on most people, it forced me to kind of jump into this video here. So I'm gonna get my lumber all set up for you guys, and I'm gonna discuss what it really means to crown a stud. And I'm not gonna be sarcastic, and I promise I won't be smacking my gum this time. That was a little bit of satire on my part, but I will be serious on this video and walk you through how to do that, and hopefully you learn something. Okay, so first things to discuss here are, one, we're gonna talk about the basics of nominal lumber and what you're really getting when you buy a 2x4. A 2x4 is the nominal dimension, and the actual dimension of these coming out of the mill. You can see, here's a 2x4. I'm sure most people have seen that. It's actually 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. So when you're doing a layout for a wall, you're laying out your studs either at 16 inch or 24 inch on center, depending on specs, plans, so forth. It really depends on what you're building, but for the most part, you're usually 16 or 24 inch on center. So that being said, you've got to lay out every single one of those studs according to that 16 or 24 inch on center layout. And that means the board is sitting middle to middle, 16 inches on center, okay? So when you're doing a layout, if you can see here, you gotta have a top plate and a bottom plate, okay? So if that wall was to be sitting up, you're gonna have your studs running in here. And I'll actually do this whole thing for you so you can see the whole thing start to finish. The thing with nominal lumber, sorry, that's someone's falling through the roof. We're getting our roof insulated. The one thing about lumber to keep in mind when it's nominal and you're not ordering engineered type lumber is that you're gonna have twists and turns at almost every piece. Some are better than others. The stuff that's really, really twisted and warped, we tend to pick away and move to the side until the job is wrapped up. We can usually use those for blocking scrap, whatever. But first thing you want to do is you just want to start picking through your studs. And the reason you want to crown a stud is because, I'm going to try and run this down the line here. If you can see on this camera, and I can try and get it in the light so you can see it, it's got a bow in it, right? And the bow is running, sorry, I'm holding the camera. The bow is running down this way. So if I see my thumb, it's running out and then back in, right? So it's crowning out to the left. Every piece is gonna have some sort of crown in it, even if it's straight and not twisted. You're gonna have, I would say, minor to major crown. And you wanna have all the crowns going the same direction. So when you start to lay out your wall, the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna lay out your top and bottom plate. So we'll go through that first. Then you're gonna lay that on the floor or the ground or wherever you're framing. Once you have the top and bottom plate laid out, and then you're gonna start cutting all your studs to length, depending on what height wall you're framing. And as you're laying those studs out after you've cut them, you wanna look for the crown on each one. So I'm gonna show you how to do that, and then you're gonna mark them and flip it over to go ahead and start framing that wall. So, okay, so like I said, basics of framing a wall are first getting your top and bottom plate cut to length as needed. In this case, we're just doing a mock-up wall, so we're here in the shop. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use these two short pieces as my top and bottom plate. Now, as I was saying, the actual dimension of a 2x4 is 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches, okay? So we're gonna actually do a really simple way of doing it. You guys have probably seen some of this before, but old school framers would literally pull their tape out, and on a tape measure, you can actually get a 16-inch on center mark. So that red number along the tape measure is telling you where the 16s are, right? And what they would literally do, and I've seen these guys still do it to this day, these old guys, they'll line them up and they'll make that 16-inch mark, and then they will go ahead and try and make the center of every one of these boards land on that line as they're laying it out. There's an easier way to do that, especially for less experienced framers. And I'm going to show you how to do that. I just realized this one's a little bit longer. That's okay. So, simple math, half of 1.5 inches is 0.75. So, half of an inch and a half is 3/4 of an inch. First step you want to do, set your two plates together up on end like this, all right? Make sure the ends are flush right here. And then what I'll do is I'll take my tape measure and I'll pull it out to where I see 16 as my first mark, right? Now, I'm gonna back it out 3/4 of an inch because that's gonna be my edge. That's half of the 1.5 inch stud that we're gonna lay out, okay? So I find my 16 mark and then I go back 3/4 of an inch. So I'm gonna be at 15 1/4 and make my mark, okay? Then I'm gonna pull it out to 32, which is my next 16 on center mark. Pull back 3/4 of an inch, okay, back 3/4 to 31 1/4, make my mark. In this case, I'm only gonna have 2 studs in the middle because it's a short little mock-up wall, but you just would continue to do that until you get to your ends. Then you wanna come back before I even use my speed square, and I'm gonna make my X's at the ends, okay? The X's are gonna be at the end, all right? So now, I can take my speed square out, holding these tight together still, lay it down on that top plate, find my mark, and draw a line right down both plates, okay? And after I draw my line down that first mark, get in a habit, you wanna do this, you make an X on the right side of that line. So this 15 1/4 on my first mark is the edge of my stud. You put the X where the actual beef of the stud is gonna go. That reminds you, that's showing, in case you're not the one nailing it up, that's showing whoever's nailing it up, that's where the stud's going, this is your edge, okay? Go to my next mark. Hold those boards tight, draw my line, X to the right of the line, if you're doing this technique, all right? And then again, all the way down until your layout is done. You have an X on every end, okay? And for a basic wall, that's all we're gonna work on, right? So now I have my top and bottom plate. So in theory, I would then go ahead and carry this out to where I'm gonna lay the wall out. And I would spread my top and bottom plate out long enough. In this case, we're gonna go down here, okay? Now it's ready for all of my studs to be laid out in the middle of this thing, okay? So then your next step would be to start cutting all your studs to length. Get their stud cut, and you're going with, you know, whatever size wall, you know, you figure out what your length is going to be obviously at that point. You're accounting for your top and bottom plate, so keep that in mind. And this is basically just really, we're talking about crowning, but in this case, your full length wall would be from the bottom of your bottom plate to the top of your top plate, okay? I'm not going to get into much more of that right now in this video, but if you were to take off that 1.5 inches, your stud's going to be 3 inches shorter than your actual wall height. So if your wall height was 95 inches, then all of your studs need to be at 92. That's why they have a 92 5/8 stud cut availability. It's less waste. That's exactly why they do that. All right. So then the next step will be to start, after you've cut them all, is you're bringing them over to your top and bottom plate of wherever you're laying that wall out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the board up flat like this. Okay. See if I can get in there. And then I'm going to turn it on end. And I'm going to look down the board like I was saying, okay? Sometimes you're going to have a crown going this way, which is, you want all those to be laid out the same way. But more importantly, and the part of the crown I'm talking about is going to be the up and down, or the dip in this board. So I'm looking down the top of this board to see if it's raising up in the middle or sagging down in the middle. When I find that, on this one it's going up here, I'm going to lay it out, and then I'm going to take my pencil in the middle of the board, and I'm going to make an arrow, like that. That is telling me my crown is going up, and I want all of my crowns when I'm laying down any floor to be up, okay? And then those crowns, as I set them up, will be to the outside of the wall, consistently to the outside of the wall. The reason for that, and you'll see at the end of this, is that if they are crowning all different directions, down and up across that wall, we get what's called an oil canning transition of the wall, where it's literally going like this. We want consistency in that wall because lumber isn't perfect unless you're getting engineered lumber. That way, that bow is consistent along the wall. So when we go to put sheetrock up or cement board for showers or wherever we're putting up for cabinets, everything is gonna be consistently one direction bowed, okay? And then if we need to do any shimming to square up that wall, we can, but we can't do it consistently if the boards are going in and out the whole way down the wall. If it's oil cans, you're gonna have problems with sheetrock. Sorry for the noise. You're gonna have problems with cement board, you're gonna have real problems with trim, and that's where it shows up, is all of that finished carpentry and millwork. So you want to take every single board as you lay it out and lay it down against all of your marks. You want to make sure you crown them up. And then you want to go ahead and make that arrow so you, in case one of them gets kicked over, if someone else is framing or shooting the nails for you, that they see those arrows need to be this way, okay? And the crazy part about this industry is everyone seems to think that this is not a big deal. Well, that problem is most guys are just throwing up walls and they're not coming back to do the rest of the work. We actually do start to finish with the same people. So the same guys framing, the same guys doing drywall, trim, tile, everything. If we're gonna go ahead and crown the, we're not gonna crown any of our studs, we're gonna come back and cuss ourselves later because that's gonna make it really difficult for all the finish work. And if you're doing start to finish, you're gonna take more time to crown your studs and pay attention to it. And yeah, I did a lot of comments on that TikTok video about all these guys that don't care, they don't do it, and what's the big deal, on and on and on. And this is the big deal, is because it looks like crap, it means you don't care, and it's only because these guys are not doing the rest of the work. So once they're done framing, they're out, it doesn't matter to them. I've heard, if I had $1 for every time I've heard somebody say, well, I've been doing this 30 years. Well, you've been doing it 30 years the wrong way. Experience doesn't mean you're a master of your craft. I've learned that over the years, and just because you've been doing it one way for a long time doesn't mean you've been doing it right. This is what it means to crown a stud, and this is why it's so important to do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and lay out each board. I'm gonna show you how to nail it up too, just so you have an understanding of what you're getting into when you start framing that wall up, and you can actually see the layout. I'll bring up the camera close and then we'll wrap it up. So we got everything nailed up, and now I'm going to show you two things. I'm going to show you where my marks are up close. You can see how I laid that out and nailed everything together. And then I'm going to show you why, again, it's so important to crown every single stud. So first thing, I'm going to bring you in here, just like we talked about. You got the X on the end, and then here's my layout. So you can see here's my line at 15 1/4, and then X to the right. Here's my line at 31 1/4. X to the right, X on the end, okay? 2x4 wall, we require 2 nails at each stud, okay? This is if you are able, this is obviously doing a conventional wall frame, okay? Then you can see the layout. So now I'm gonna bring my level in here. Let's see if I can. I want you to look at the gap on that level. Wait, there isn't one. That's why you crown. So all of my crowns are going up, 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 up. All my arrows are written with the board pointing up, okay? That's why you crown your studs. So now I've got a planed wall. It's not perfect, but it's all planed out the same direction, so I don't have a level that would be going like this, back and forth rocking. So I'd have a gap here, and then I'd be flush here, and then I have another gap there. It's brain damage to try and get sheetrock, cement board, trim, all that stuff up there if you don't crown. So that's what crowning a stud means. It's not putting a crown on something. I'm not going to decorate it. It literally is just finding the bend on the edge of the stud and making sure all the bends, when I lay a wall down on the floor, all those crowns go up, if that makes sense. So hopefully there's the real version, not the sarcastic version of what I'm talking about. It's why you do it. It's why it's important to do it. And hopefully you got the basics of how to lay out a wall and frame it as well. All right, that's all I got on this one. Make sure you subscribe to the videos. Check out the other videos above. Like the video, please. Comment below if you got questions, comments, anything else. We'll be pumping out some more videos on some of the same topics. And we're going to continue to push forward with how to flip a house 101. So more of those videos are coming out as well. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one.